Hi everyone! This video is about the American Revolutionary War and some of the events leading up to this important event in American history. The American Revolutionary War started because the colonists from the 13 original colonies no longer want to be taxed and controlled by Great Britain. However, the British believed they had this right because they sent troops to help the Americans fight New France during the French and Indian War, which was fought over territory. After the war was over, the British government wanted to tax the colonists to pay for the troops and the cost of the war. In 1764, the British started to force new laws and taxes on the colonists, and this made them very upset. They didn't want to pay the taxes or have the British government controlling their lives anymore. The colonists believed these taxes were cruel and unreasonable because they did not have anyone representing them in Parliament to argue for or against these laws and taxes. James Otis Jr. said that taxation without representation was tyranny. Protests and riots started to occur more and more due to the new taxes, laws, and unfair treatment. The Boston Massacres were the main events that led to the war. In 1770, British troops opened fire into a crowd of protesters, killing 5 men and injuring several others. This angered the colonists even more. Another important event happened in December of 1773. This was called the Boston Tea Party. Despite its name, it wasn't an actual party, though. The colonists weren't happy with the new tax on tea, so several men dressed up as Native Americans and boarded a ship in the Boston harbor and dumped all the tea on board into the harbor, destroying it all. This did not help them, though. The British government then demanded that they pay for the damaged tea and punish them for their actions. A new set of laws were put into place, and they were considered so harsh that they were called the Intolerable Acts. In 1774, at the First Continental Congress, representatives from most of the colonies met in Philadelphia and sent a request to King George III to stop these acts, but they were ignored. Eventually, the colonists started to boycott or refuse British goods, and this made the British government very upset. In April of 1775, rumors started spreading that British troops stationed in Boston were about to advance and move to arrest those in charge of the colonies and the patriots who were responsible for organizing the protests. Paul Revere, a patriot, was able to warn the colonists that the British were coming, and on April 19th of 1775, the American Revolutionary War started when the first shots were fired at the battles of Lexington and Concord. Shortly after the start of the war, the Second Continental Congress met and appointed General George Washington as the commander of the Continental Army to help fight against the British Army, also known as the Redcoats. The first major battle of the war was the Battle of Bunker Hill at Massachusetts. Even though the Redcoats won this battle, they did lose a lot of men, and it showed them it wasn't going to be easy defeating the Americans. The British were really starting to gain ground, and many Americans were starting to lose hope. But on December 25th, 1776, George Washington took his men across the icy Delaware River and launched a sneak attack on the British troops stationed in New Jersey. This resulted in the capture of over 1,000 British troops and gave new hope to the Americans. This is known as the Battle of Trenton. During the war, the French were secretly helping the Americans fight against their longtime rivals, Great Britain. But the French later publicly showed their support for the Americans after the Americans began to succeed in the war. They sent troops, supplies, and food to help support the Americans. The first major American victory was at the Battle of Saratoga in the fall of 1777. The last great battle of the war took place around Yorktown, Virginia. British troops under the command of General Cornwallis were camped there waiting for British ships to arrive with supplies and more troops, but the French Navy stopped them before making it through. General George Washington, along with French and American troops, surrounded the city, making it impossible for the British to retreat. For 11 days, the Americans attacked the city with cannon fire, day and night. Once the British realized no help was coming, they surrendered. The war ended in the colonies on October 19th, 1781. Over the next year, British troops started to leave, and on September 3rd, 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. This treaty negotiated peace between Great Britain and the United States, officially ended the war, and recognized the United States of America as a free, independent country. Well, guys, that's it on the American Revolutionary War. Yes, I know that was a lot of information, but there usually is a lot of facts when it comes to any war. But I still hope you learned a lot and enjoyed it. Please come back next week to see another video on American history. Bye for now! In 1770, British children... 1871. 1789. 1801. 1883. In December 1775. Wait, what? Just throwing out dates over here. Really? What are you doing? Okay, I pay you. Now go down here. I forgot a whole section.